Hi folks, and today I'm going to give a kind of a quick overview of high level of how training works to make you a better runner, get you prepared for your event, and some things to make sure that you are doing to maximize your training. So first of all, the way training works is you try and stress something in the body. You're trying to stress some type of a system typically. That stress could be you're adding more miles, you're adding more pace, you're doing things, but you add a little bit of stress. You push the body a little bit farther than it's used to. That combined with rest, and rest doesn't mean that you necessarily have a day off, but there's some recovery that occurs afterwards. But stress plus rest equals growth. So if you don't have any type of a stress and you don't have any type of rest, you'll never grow, but with stress and rest, you grow. So ideally, really, all your running would be done by duration and effort because your body could care less about the number of miles you ran. It could care less about the pace that you ran, heart rate, power. None of those things really matter to your body. What your body is responding to is how long were you doing something and what effort did you have to do it? Because what you want the body to do is say, hey, in case Mark does this again, let's rebuild a little bit stronger so that we can handle this a little bit better. So ideally, it's duration and effort. We tend to use miles, we tend to use pace or sometimes heart rate and power because we like to quantify things a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you realize at its core, it's how long did you do it and what was the effort that you had. So the thing we're going to talk about specifically today is it's not about pace. Your body doesn't respond to pace. We use that pace to get at an effort. There's other ways we get at that effort as well. Some people use heart rate or you might use power. They're doing the same thing. They're trying to kind of quantify for you so you can follow along on your watch whether or not you're kind of getting the right effort because effort is king. It's duration and effort. So let's say there's really three kind of key runs that you're doing. There's obviously more than this, but you're usually doing easy aerobic work. You tend to do a lot of that. You might be working at your lactate threshold, or you might be doing VO2 max work. That high level, kind of the three runs that you're typically going to be doing throughout your training. So here's an example of how that might work. Most people do train with pace because pace quantifies things. And what you do is you use one of the calculators out there that takes a look at a race time or a time trial that you've done and says, based upon this, what do we think the pace ranges are so that you will get the correct effort for your easy runs, the correct effort for your lactate runs, the correct effort for your VO2 max? So if you have a half marathon time of 2 hours, that would suggest that your pace for easy is probably about 9:30 to 10:30 per mile. For lactate threshold, it's probably about 8:35 to 8:50 a mile. And if you're doing VO2 max intervals, that pace is probably about 8:10 to 8:20. Now that assumes something when those calculators are doing that. It assumes that you're running a relatively flat course. Now that doesn't mean that there's no rolling in it at all, but if you're running hilly, it's not assuming that because your effort definitely changes when you're on a hill. So it assumes that it's fairly flat. It assumes that the temperature is good, which usually means it's below 70, and it assumes that the humidity is good, which is generally below 65. So if any of those things are not true, if you're running a course that's hilly, or it's above 70, or the humidity is above 65, then those paces really need to be adjusted to make sure that you get the same correct effort. So here's an example. Let's say that you're going to do a warm-up. You're going to do 2 miles at 8:35 to 8:50, which is your lactate threshold. Then you can do a little bit of a cool down. Let's say it's 75 degrees out. It's 95% humidity. And let's say that you hit 8:40 for those miles. You go, wow, great. I hit 8:40. I said 8:35 to 8:50. I'm right in the pocket. I ran 8:40. Except the heat and humidity would have actually made that effort more like 8:20, which if you went back to the other charts is more of a VO2 max workout. So what happened is you didn't actually work the lactate training that we wanted to work. You actually ended up with VO2 max work because you didn't adjust the pace to get the right effort. It's a hard thing to do. I hate to adjust my pace when it's hot or humid. Thankfully, I don't have many hills to deal with. I hate doing that, and I'll be honest, sometimes I don't do it, but I understand that I should be doing that because if you don't, again, it's duration and effort, and if I get the effort wrong because I'm using a pace that didn't adjust for the conditions, then I've kind of missed the entire purpose of the workout. So remember that you should always adjust your pace, your HR, or your power for conditions. There's all kinds of different ways to do that. And I'll give you another guideline that you can use as well if you don't want to get into calculators, say, well, the temperature is this, I've got to adjust by this, etc. If you're doing an easy run, those easy runs should always be what's called a paragraph pace, meaning you should be able to speak in kind of a full paragraph before you have to take a gasp for breath. If you're doing lactate work, it's called a sentences pace, meaning that you should only be able to spit out about a sentence before you have to take a breath. So going back to the example I used, chances are in that heat and humidity, when somebody was doing those 2 miles, they were probably, if they were able to talk, they were getting out a few words here and there because that wasn't a sentence pace anymore. It was a VO2 max workout, and that's a words pace. So 2 or 3 good guidelines there. Easy should be paragraph, lactate should be sentence, VO2 max should be words. But really, remember, it's not about pace, it's not about heart rate, it's not about power, it's about getting the right effort for your workout.